If you don't fix this, here's what happens. You keep showing up, being capable, intelligent, thoughtful, and still getting overlooked and underestimated. Still feeling like something isn't quite clicking. Because people aren't experiencing the real you. And until you learn how to show up as effortlessly you, without overthinking, without pretending, that gap doesn't close, and it starts to cost you more than you realize. So in this video, I'm going to show you what actually creates that feeling of magnetism and why most people get it completely wrong. The first shift is this. You have to stop performing. And this one is sneaky because most people don't realize that they're doing it. You're choosing your words a bit more carefully than you need to. You're monitoring how you sound. You're aiming to come across as intelligent or warm or impressive or easygoing. All good things, but the moment that your attention shifts from the interaction to how you're being perceived inside the interaction, something changes. There's a kind of tension that starts to creep in, and people feel it. There's actually a lot of research on how quickly we pick up on this. Things like micro-expressions and tone shifts and subtle inconsistencies. Our brains are constantly scanning for congruence. So when what you're saying and how you're feeling aren't fully aligned, it creates a tiny signal of friction. Again, most people won't consciously think something's off here. They'll just feel a little less drawn in, a little less connected. And this is where a lot of very capable people get stuck because they're doing everything right. They're thoughtful, articulate, self-aware, but they're also slightly holding themselves in check. I remember this really clearly from when I first started doing more on-camera work. I would sit down, I had my points, I knew what I wanted to say, and there was this subtle layer of trying to deliver it well, trying to sound a certain way. And if you go back and watch those videos, nothing is obviously wrong with them, I don't think, but there's a kind of tightness there, a sense that I'm just a little bit monitoring how I'm coming across. Compare that to now, where I'm much less focused on how it's landing in real time and more focused on just saying what I mean. So the shift here is simple, but not always easy. You want to move your attention out of yourself and back into the moment, back into the conversation, and back into the person that's in front of you, and back into what you actually want to say, because magnetism starts to show up when there's nothing in the way, when there's no layer of management sitting between you and the interaction. Here's a useful way to think about it. Performing is really about managing your output, what you're putting out, how it's landing, what impression it's creating. And once you're in that mode, you've stepped one foot out of the conversation. You're watching it happen rather than being in it. So dropping that one layer changes a lot. Okay, the second shift is to reduce the internal noise. Now, this is connected to performing, but it's a different problem. So performing is about what you're putting out. This one is about what's happening on the receiving end. Because even when you're not actively trying to manage impressions, a lot of people are still running a full conversation in their own head while they're talking to someone else. So you're listening, but you're also thinking, what should I say next? Did that come out right? Am I making sense? What do they think of me? It's subtle, but it splits your attention. Part of you is in the moment, and then part of you is watching yourself in the moment. And that divide is enough to weaken your presence. Because magnetism is closely tied to attention. People can tell when they have your full attention, and they definitely feel it when they don't. You have probably had the experience of talking to someone who is technically engaged. They are nodding, they're responding, but something feels slightly off, like they're not completely there. That's what this is. So the fix here is to get genuinely interested. Start noticing specifics. What are they actually saying? What's underneath what they're saying? What's interesting here? Or even more simply, just decide, I am going to fully listen to this person. That alone quiets a lot of the noise because your brain has a job now. And when that internal commentary settles down, something else opens up. There's more space in how you respond, more ease in how you speak. You're not rushing in to fill gaps or prove anything. And again, people feel that. They feel when someone is really easy to be with, when there's no pressure in the interaction, when they don't have to work to connect. That is a big part of what we're calling magnetism here. It's a kind of grounded availability, and most people are a lot closer to it than they think. They just have too much internal noise in their heads that's in the way. So I'm actually curious, which one of these do you notice in yourself the most? Is it that internal commentary or more that performing piece? So let me know in the comments. I read all of them, even if I don't always have a chance to respond to every single one. The third shift is to own your pace. This one is really easy to overlook, but it changes how you come across almost immediately. So a lot of people move too quickly when they're interacting. They speak quickly, they respond quickly, they fill every gap. And underneath that, there's usually a bit of urgency, a sense of needing to keep things going, to keep the other person engaged, and to make sure it's landing. But that pace creates a certain kind of energy. It can feel slightly anxious, slightly effortful. And again, people pick up on that. When someone is grounded, their pace reflects it. They're not rushing to get their point across. They're not over-explaining to make sure that they are understood. They say what they want to say, and they let it land. Even small things start to shift here. So you pause for a second before you respond. You let there be a moment of silence without jumping in to fill it. You don't stack 3 explanations on top of each other just to be sure. From the inside, this can feel like you're doing less, like you're being a bit too quiet or a bit too slow. But from the outside, it reads very differently. It reads as calm, as self-trust, someone who isn't trying to win the interaction. So I noticed this really clearly on the golf course, actually, playing with people who were just talking through every shot, reacting to everything, filling every second, and then noticing how different it felt when I played with people who were playing in a different way. They take their time and they're not commenting on every outcome. There's a kind of steadiness that comes through. Magnetism has a rhythm to it, and most people are just a little bit ahead of that rhythm. Now, if you're recognizing yourself in some of the things that I am talking about here, where you know you're capable, but it's just not translating the way it should, this is exactly the kind of thing that I put into my self-sabotage recovery guide. If you can see yourself in what we have been talking about, then that's where I would start. It helps you to spot the subtle ways that you get in your own way, and more importantly, how to shift it. So you can download it below. The fourth shift is to stop diluting yourself to be more likable. This shows up in ways that are pretty easy to miss. You soften what you really think. You add extra qualifiers. You agree more than you actually do. You downplay parts of yourself that might feel like too much. And again, it's coming from a reasonable place. You want to connect. You want the interaction to go well. But when you keep adjusting yourself in that direction, something gets lost. There's less clarity, and clarity is a big part of what draws people in. So here's what this sounds like in practice. Someone asks your opinion, and instead of saying what you actually think, you say, it depends. There are definitely pros and cons. It could work, versus just, honestly, I'd probably do it differently, and here's why. So same person, same moment, completely different presence. The second version gives people something real to respond to. There's a sense of, okay, I know where you stand. When everything is softened and hedged and kind of smoothed out, it's harder to feel that. And people don't lean in the same way. They don't get a strong sense of you. They don't remember you as clearly. This doesn't mean that you need to be bold or provocative just for the sake of it. It's just being a little more direct with what you already think, a little more willing to let your perspective stand on its own. You don't need to rush in and agree to keep things comfortable. You don't need to explain every angle to make sure no one could possibly misunderstand you. You can say the thing and let it be enough. There's a kind of steadiness in that, and people are drawn to it. They trust it more because it feels like it's coming from somewhere real. So if you want to become more magnetic, this is one of the quiet shifts. You allow yourself to be more clearly yourself, less edited. The fifth shift is to become someone that you actually believe in. Because everything that we have talked about so far, performance, internal noise, pace, dilution, those are all surface level expressions of something deeper. They tend to show up when, underneath it all, you're not fully sold on yourself. So you compensate, you monitor a bit more closely, you adjust a bit more carefully, you hesitate just a bit more than you need to. It's subtle, but it's enough to take the edge off your presence. And this is why trying to act more magnetic rarely works for very long. You can change your body language, your tone, your delivery, but if your underlying self-concept hasn't shifted, it keeps pulling you back into those same patterns. What does work is much simpler. You start to see yourself differently. You begin relating to yourself as someone who is worth listening to, someone whose perspective has weight. Someone who doesn't need to prove or earn their place in every interaction. And when that starts to settle in, even a little bit, your behavior changes all on its own. You speak more plainly. You take up more space. So I see this all the time with clients. Someone who is already capable, already thoughtful, already articulate, but it's just not translating. So they feel overlooked and underestimated. And then something shifts in how they see themselves. Sometimes something very specific and small, and suddenly the exact same person starts landing completely differently. Same words, same environments, different presence. That's the lever. When your internal sense of self is solid, everything else simplifies. There's less to manage and less to compensate for and less to think about. And that is where that feeling of effortless starts to come from, because there's just less in the way. So when you put all of this together, what you start to see is that magnetism isn't something that you add on. It's what's left when there is less interference, when you're not performing, when your attention is actually in the moment, when you're not rushing yourself, when you're not sanding down your edges. And when underneath all of that, you actually trust yourself, then people experience you differently. They lean in more. They stay more engaged. They remember you. And nothing about that requires you to become a different person. It's more about removing the layers that were never really you to begin with. Now, one thing that I hear a lot, especially from people who have spent decades in these patterns, is it too late? I'm in my 40s, my 50s, my 60s. Is this just who I am now? So I want to address that directly because it's the wrong question. The patterns that we have been talking about, performing, noise, rushing, diluting, those aren't your personality. They're just habits. And habits shift when you can actually see them. Age doesn't close that door. If anything, the self-awareness that you have accumulated over decades makes this faster to work through, not slower. So if that landed, then the next video I would watch is this one, How to Be Magnetic at Any Age. It goes deeper on exactly that, how presence develops over time and why a lot of people find that this actually clicks more naturally in their 40s and 50s and beyond than it ever did when they were younger. So that one is up next and I will see you there. Okay. Ooh. Just stretch. Okay. They fill every gap. And that was weird. Let's try that again. The fifth shift, that's kind of hard to say. Fifth shift. That's tricky.